Over 8 billion times a year, an American steps onto a transit bus or train. These millions of people depend on transit as a lifeline to jobs, to medical services, to school, to shopping, and to recreational activities on a daily basis. Many of these riders, such as the old, the young, and economically disadvantaged, have no transportation alternative, so transit has become the vital link to mobility. There is, however, one segment of the population on which the transit industry continues to place special emphasis, that being the growing numbers of elderly and disabled Americans. The current population of Americans who have disabilities is estimated at over 35 million. This number is growing, and the transit industry has geared up to provide mobility for this group. Though the great majority of elderly and disabled persons can effectively use standard public transit service, there is a need to provide service that can be used by all disabled persons. Across the country, transit services for elderly and disabled persons generally fall into one of three basic categories. 1. Fixed-route lift-equipped service. 2. Demand-responsive or paratransit service. And 3. A combination of both. Fixed-route lift-equipped transit service uses vehicles with wheelchair lifts to make regular bus service accessible to those who use wheelchairs. Ramps are sometimes used on smaller vehicles to provide wheelchair accessibility on scheduled buses. Elevators and other modifications are used on rail systems to provide similar accessibility to wheelchair users. These features provide elderly and disabled individuals, particularly those who use wheelchairs, with the opportunity to use the same service that is available to the entire riding public. Approximately 21% of the transit system in the United States provide fixed-route lift-equipped service. The second type of service is demand-responsive or paratransit service, which offers door-to-door or curb-to-curb service in smaller vehicles that are specially equipped with the needs of the disabled in mind. About 34% of the transit systems across the country serve elderly and disabled riders exclusively through demand-responsive service.
I use Access 5 days a week to go to and from work. Without lift-equipped vehicles, I could not keep my job.
And it meets my schedule. I use it to do my shopping for recreation. It allows me as I need it.
It's a wonderful service. You know, it carries you and it brings you back. And it puts you up on time. And that's what I like.
The most prevalent approach involves a combination of lift-equipped fixed-route service and demand-responsive service. Nearly 45% of transit systems nationwide provide this mix of service. Providing transit service to the elderly and disabled is an essential responsibility of the transit industry, but the cost of providing this service is a growing concern, since transit managers must balance the transit needs of the entire community with the availability of equipment and limited funds. Some aggregate figures illustrate this cost factor. Depending on specifics, the cost per ride for those trips utilizing the lifts and other special equipment on regular fixed-route transit service ranges from $10 to as high as several $100s. Compare this to the cost of about $1 to $1.50 for trips not requiring the use of specialized equipment on fixed-route buses. Cost per trip on demand-responsive or paratransit services generally ranges from approximately $5 to $25 per trip. The type and mix of services vary considerably by the size, geography, demographics, weather, and financial resources of each community. There is a greater degree of reliance on fixed-route accessible services in larger metropolitan areas, having larger transit systems. Conversely, small communities and rural areas typically rely more heavily on special demand-responsive paratransit services. Some argue that having wheelchair lifts on all buses is a civil right, but the Congress and the courts do not agree and have ruled that the ways and means of providing mobility to the disabled is best decided at the local level. Federal regulations do insist, however, that transit systems meet the needs of the nation's elderly and disabled people. Two states, California and Michigan, have passed laws mandating that all buses purchased with state funds be lift-equipped. But experience has found that the lift-equipped buses are used very sparingly. For example, the Regional Transportation District in Los Angeles, with a population of 7 million, reports that its lift-equipped fleet of 1,692 buses provides 90 wheelchair-related trips each day. By comparison, the transit system in Cincinnati, serving a population of 385,000, has a demand-responsive fleet of 19 vehicles providing 300 trips each day. Whatever the choice, experience shows that decisions on how best to provide service for the disabled are best made at the local level. Transit systems work closely with disabled and elderly persons in their communities to design, operate, and market services that work best in their communities. In reviewing the characteristics of today's transit services for elderly and disabled individuals, one finds a rich variation of transit services which has grown out of each community's unique commitment to see the special needs of its citizens met in the manner they most desire and find most effective. The transit industry has a strong commitment to provide mobility for all of the country's people, including the elderly and disabled. And that commitment will continue as transit goes about its business of moving America's citizens safely, effectively, efficiently, and economically throughout the nation's cities and towns.